2, 1. All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to Long Toss. I'll start with the obvious. We are not live, and my big apologies here. I did try my best. Adam was going to show me how to do it, got busy. Then I was left to my own devices to Google and try and figure it out. Anyways, here we are, pre-recorded. Next week, I promise we will be live. And on that, let's get into it. All right. Long Toss episode 302. I am Scott Belford, joined by a wider range of panelists here with all sorts of thoughts and opinions on what we just watched happen here. We will start with a comedian and good buddy of mine, Sean LeComber. Welcome back to the show, sir. How you doing?
Great to be here. Great to be here. Good timing.
Very good timing, right? You get to join us for probably the feel-good episode of the year, I think.
Yeah.
Jeff of 40 Men. How you doing,
That's
buddy?
me.
Thanks for joining us. This is your first time, your debut. You're breaking your cherry with us.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of been interesting because I've got an Adam and my Adam quit. So our podcast has been delayed because we're now no longer the 40 Men. We are 40 Man. And I just
Right.
turned 50, so I don't even know if I can use that moniker anymore.
Okay.
So
We'll
for having
forgive
me,
you.
man.
We'll
Thanks
let
for
you
having
off
me.
the hook on that
I
one.
appreciate
Absolutely. Really happy to have on the show another debut here from the Walk-Off Mariners, Jordy Bott. Thanks so much for joining, bud.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be doing this.
Oh yeah, you're flying high right now. Your Mariners are definitely rubbing us Jays fans face in it, but no, thrilled you could join.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Talk some Blue Jays, talk some baseball.
And then we have our regulars, our go-tos. To start with, Baseball Jen. Thank you for joining us. I know you've got a lot to say. I had to reel you in before we even hit record here, so I'm excited. Thanks for joining. How has your weekend been?
My weekend was good. I went to my first TFC game, and that was actually pretty cool. And got to go down into the Tunnel Club. But I'm telling you, like between the Leafs, the Jays, and Drake this weekend, I am no longer admitting I'm from Toronto. I'm
just a good old-fashioned Mississauga girl now, eh?
I think Scarborough should unamalgamate.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't get out there much. Yeah.
All right. And of course, we have Hey Kami. Joel, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for taking the time, man. I know how last minute you jumped on here, and it's appreciated, buddy, because I know you also, I'm sure, have some spicy opinions on what we just watched.
Oh yeah, of course. But always happy to be on. Always happy to be talking Jays. And even when things aren't going well, it's baseball season, and I'd rather, be watching a bad team than not watching baseball at all. That was even hard to say that. We shouldn't be watching a bad team, right?
Yeah.
This is
better than nothing.
This is why Jays fans, I feel like we're all masochists at this point, right? Like we're like, well, I guess this extreme pain we feel every single day is better than nothing at all, right? We're 3 days grace is what we are already at this point.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna start with a quick tease about tomorrow before we get into it, and Joel and I are super excited to do this. We are going to have on the show Eric Gagne, of course, the consecutive save leader in all of Major League Baseball, one of only 2 Canadians to win the Cy Young Award, World Series champion with the 2007 Boston Red Sox. So keep an eye out for that one, everybody. If you're a member of Patreon, obviously it's going to be available to you tomorrow. And if not, my guess is a little later in the week, maybe next week. But very
And he's
excited.
he's the originator of the Janssen glasses too, isn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, Eric Goggles Gagne, exactly.
The goggles. Yeah.
Okay, we just watched what started as a very hopeful game. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. showing power for the first time since April 10th with a grand slam. This team scored 5 runs in an inning and then followed it up with another run in a different inning. I don't know if that has happened yet this year. The Jays like to play 1 inning and then see if they can get by on that for the other 8. So it was nice to see some runs in multiple innings. There
Sort
were
of like
some
my
two,
work. It's sort of like my work week, you know, like
yeah.
all into one afternoon and hope it glides me for the week, you know. I like it.
Life of a
Yes.
performer.
We
Mhm.
watched this team get some 2-out hits to score runners in scoring position. Again, something we haven't seen much of. All in all, it really felt like we were on the right track. Alek Manoah even looked serviceable for 3 innings. And then the wheels fell off. So we are going to break down this Jays National Series. We are going to get into the dominance of Yusei Kikuchi, one of the few bright spots on this team. We are going to talk pitching in general, and that we constantly bang the, well, we may not score runs, but at least we have pitching and defense drum. And, well, if you start looking at these numbers for the pitchers, they're not very good. They're quite ugly. And so we will talk that. We're going to do a temperature check on John Schneider. I don't think I've ever been quite at my wit's end with him like I am right now. And we'll see how the panel feels about it. We're going to talk early trade fixes. Is there something that this front office can do to pull this team out of the fire? The truth is, we watched in 2021 the bullpen literally sink the whole season. We watched it just about do it again in 2022, and then we watched the Atkins and Shapiro actually go out and fix the bullpen in 2023. And running this bullpen back, there was a lot of hope that it would be fine. But my God, without Chad Green and without Jimmy Garcia, it has been ugly. So we'll get into it. We'll do a Mariners minute. Jordy, this is where you're going to shine, brother. The Mariners on the other side of the coin has just like been on a pitching streak like no other. Jordy, do you have the numbers right now as to what was just about accomplished?
I don't have the exact numbers. I know you and Juan were talking about it in our group chat. But I do know that there was a stretch. It was 21 earned runs in the 20 starts.
In 20 starts. Think about how insane that is. Just let that ruminate in your brain, all right? Like the Mariners aren't known for scoring runs, but who needs runs when you're only allowing 1.02 runs a game, right? And then finally, if we have time, we'll touch on Shohei Ohtani, and we've all got our topics as well. Jen, I know you didn't get to yours last week, so we'll start with you. And we'll start with you on where we're at on this team after watching this game and them drop a series to the Nationals that they absolutely had to win. Just so everybody knows the dire straits that this team is in. For Toronto to be on an 89 win pace from this point, they need to go 16-9. That's just to be on an 89 win pace going into June. And if you look at June's schedule, it is even rougher than the April we faced. So backs against the wall. Jen, you just watched what happened. Just a calamity of errors. Again, this was a team loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it very much was a team loss. And I don't know. I keep tweeting like, what's the breaking point for this team? And everybody who keeps replying to me is like, oh, it was, the wild card series last year. That's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking where the breaking point was for fans. I'm asking, where is the breaking point for this organization? Like, at what point are real changes made? And I don't even know yet what those changes might be. Are you firing the hitting coach? Are you firing John Schneider? Are you drastically changing the lineup? Are you making a trade? But at some point, this organization has to look at what is on this field and look at the various types of ways they find to lose, even when it looks like they've got a game in hand. And the game that they did win against the Nationals, really they won because the Nationals threw it away, right? Those 4 runs that they scored in the first inning were really very much a gift served up to them on a platter. And so they just have not looked good. And, save for, Kikuchi and Kevin Gosman. And I don't know. I don't know where this team goes from here. I don't know what kind of conversations are being had. I don't know how many nights John Schneider can come out and say, we're real close, man. We're right there. We're right there. We're right there. I don't know how much longer you can actually do that. And it's tough to say that when they did put up 8 runs today, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was able to hit that grand slam and come up big in a big moment, and good for him. Does any of that mean anything moving forward? We have no evidence to suggest that it does.
And one thing, if there's any bright spots, it has been Vladdy over the last about 9 games, who's hitting well over 300, finally showing some power today. But again, you summed it up well, Jen. It's like, is it enough? I don't know. And Joel, I know we were texting about Ernie Clement and Davis Schneider, 2 guys who are really, the least expectations are on these guys. But that said, they have been the most consistent dudes on this team. How long can John Schneider continue to not mix up this batting order?
Well, we can't look at the team like it's 2021 again and just expect that top 3-4 spots in the lineup is untouchable. And we have to have, Bo is my favorite player. Bo is my favorite player. He does not deserve to be hitting in the top 4 spots in the lineup right now. You have to construct a lineup based on winning on a day-to-day basis. And you have to look at those numbers at this point in the season. At this point in the season, you have to look at the numbers next to the player and say, that's maybe a little bit more important than your track record right now, what you're doing. And we have to put the hot bats up higher. It's a weird situation where I may want to see more lineups where if you have to have Kirk catching, maybe I want Jansen in the DH spot, and I want one of these gloves out of the game and Turner playing third, right? Just get 3 guys, Schneider, Jansen, Turner, who are able to get on a fastball and drive them into the gaps, and have 3 guys, and then maybe Vladdy's on that game. And maybe you can tie those things together and you can score some consistent runs. I know what Ernie's going to give me at the plate. Ernie doesn't walk. Ernie's going to take 3 hacks at strikes. That's what he does. He goes up there, he hits about 285, and his on base is about 310 because there's really no walk separation. So it's just it's knowing where these guys can situate in the lineup. Maybe a platoon, like George Springer right now, does not exist there. And he does, especially in the leadoff spot. And this has been something I've been arguing about 3 years ago. I'm like, this guy should be hitting 4th. Now I don't even know if he's a full-time player, right? I'm take Springer out, put Clement in left or right. He can play the outfield and have whoever is hitting in the lineup right now. That's what you need to have. You can't have guys who are struggling, especially 1, 2, 3. You can't. Your 1, 2, 3 guys can't be starting with 600 OPSs, 500 OPS in Bo's case. That can't be the first 3 guys that you're trying to cycle the back of you're trying to get back to the 580 OPS guy. What? It's such a shift from where it was in 2001 of, you want that guy in the bottom to be able to transition up to the top. But now you're almost like, hey, we're in the bottom of the lineup. We might get some hits. It's weird. It's a weird place to be.
If you were to tell me that 32 games in, this team would have a worse record than the Detroit Tigers, than the Kansas City Royals, than the Oakland Athletics, than the Washington Nationals, than the Pittsburgh Pirates, I would have gone and been like, you are lying bold-faced to my face at the beginning of the year. And that's exactly where we find this team right now. Jeff, I know Springer was just touched on. Is he... Okay. I was going to ask, is he done? As in, obviously his best days are behind him. Is he done as a leadoff hitter?
Yes, absolutely. He's been done as a leadoff hitter. He proved that last year too.
Yeah.
He doesn't. The big thing with him, I I don't like his approach as a leadoff hitter. How many times have you seen George swing at the first pitch of the game? What, maybe half the times he's been up there already, which doesn't bode well for a leadoff hitter. I know he's trying to get his home runs. I don't know if he's trying to beat Ricky Henderson's record for home runs leading off a game. I don't know what it is. He hacks at the first pitch, and then the rest of the time he just looks like he's not comfortable. Like outfield wise, he's fine. Like defensively, he's turned himself into a defensive first player now. He's not hitting. He struck out 3 more times. He doesn't seem to have any kind of eye at the plate at all. So why we still have him leading off when he's not even getting the pitcher to throw 5 or 6 pitches to see how that pitcher's throwing for the day? I mean, that's what I would want my leadoff guy to do. And he's not even doing that. If he's not going to have any power, and he's not going to have any hits, why swing at the first pitch every time? I've been waiting for him to change it, and he never, ever changes. I said it earlier, we were talking about before the broadcast. I'm comparing this now to Vernon Wells. When Vernon Wells dropped off the face of the earth and he had that albatross of a contract, the question is now, can we do what Ricciardi did and get something for it? No. So what do we do with him? He's a 9-hole hitter right now, if he's even a top 9 hitter on the team. So for me, you have to either figure out a way to get rid of him, which is probably not going to happen, or you've got to get him to put his ego aside and say, you're not doing anything. Let's take a few days off, see if you can figure yourself out. We'll throw you back in at 7 in the lineup, and we'll go from there.
How much
Sean,
of
when
this?
you
Sorry,
go ahead.
I just
No,
wanted
go
to ask
ahead.
a question. How much of this could have or should have been predicted by the front office when they signed him?
It was predictable last year to
All
me.
of it.
It
All of it
was.
in the very, very first season of depending on a 32-year-old injury-prone center fielder who at that time you could not guarantee how much of his success over that last 5 years was on cheating or real, and then expect that to last for 5-6 years in center field on AstroTurf. That's just
they moved worlds.
ridiculous.
They moved
Yes, they did.
worlds.
Yeah. They
to-
moved
to
2
get-
corner outfielders
to
who
get him out of center field. Exactly. That like
they moved our
amount of-
runners in scoring position hitting.
the amount of
Yeah.
offense that they gave up to make sure that George Springer was still in the lineup every single day and to make sure that he was in right field and to cross your fingers and hope that a 33-year-old that was showing regression just finds it again. I mean, it is I don't even know what to say. Like, it's a little bit
Like,
insane. It's a little bit I have lost all faith in this front office.
It's okay. He's an all or nothing swing. George Springer at the plate, all or nothing swing. Everything he's got is into his swing. So that eventually trails off when your barrel rate goes down. Okay. When you look at veteran hitters who have struggled with that recently, Arenado dealt with it, Matt Carpenter dealt with it, and they had little career resurgences when they were able to go and reapproach their swing later in their career. Joey Votto had this. He
Anthony Rizzo.
Right. It's something where Springer has to. His athleticism can't carry him now. That just go up and I'm going to get the heater 99 and I'm going to barrel it and I'm going to hit extra base hits till the end of time is over now based on his athleticism. So he has to recreate that swing for maximum efficiency now. Can he do that? Can he rebuild himself at 35?
Look at himself like Justin Turner. When I watched Justin Turner hit those 2 home runs at that homestand, he hit them 380, 370.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
the
So
swings
good.
weren't hard swings, but they were direct swings, right? He took what came to him and he put it out there. It's the complete opposite of Springer. Springer should be watching Justin Turner every game, how he approaches it, how he swings the bat.
Sean, is there such thing as too much loyalty? Because we've watched John Schneider stick with these top 3 in the batting order. We've watched him get Eric Swanson back after, he went through stuff that no parent should need to go through, on top of injury, on top of not being able to build himself up and just be thrown right back into the fire. Watch it not work and then continue to do it. What a loyal man.
With the Swanson thing, the funny thing is everybody loves Gibby, and that's what Gibby would have done. Gibby would have just said like, "You're back. Here we go, fella." You know what I mean? Like he would have just given him the ball in the same situation. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Schneider using him in Swanson in high leverage right away, like to me is a mistake. Like, but he would probably say, what were my options at that time? Tell me who else I was supposed to put in there that was going to help me get those outs. Was there a higher leverage lever that I just like left off to the side and let Swanson go in? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And as far as the top three, he's probably looking at it like, okay, we can reconstruct this and throw Schneider in there. The fans love Schneider. Clement, we can throw Ernie in there. Everybody loves him and just have this lovable, fun top three. But at the end of the day, we either get Springer, Bichette, and Guerrero going or we're sunk. We either get them going or we're dead. So this is it. We're going to put them in the position they're most comfortable with. And, we're just going to roll with it. I mean, I think they've done a good job of I think in some ways over the years, they've tried to make Guerrero uncomfortable. The jacket thing would have been easy to say like, yeah, you get the jacket back or whatever. But they kind of like, nah, they kind of didn't like how comfortable Guerrero was. I think they've tried to like push him and make him uncomfortable to see if it'll get him out of his, they just felt like maybe if he's a little bit pissed off at the organization, he might produce better. I mean, he's been a bit better lately. Bichette, I don't worry about Bichette, but you worry about the season.
Yeah.
Because if it takes him another 20 games to heat up, it's too late. So I think that in Schneider's mind, he's thinking like, these are I have to get these three bats going. And maybe they won't even get going and we're screwed. But what are the options? Like we don't have bats lower. I mean, I like Jansen, but I don't know. I feel like he probably feels like he's up against it and he's out of options.
He is up against it. He is out of options. I mean, this fan base is in panic mode, and I feel like we should be. I feel like
well, we've been fed the same shit for, it's basically what is this game 170 of last season.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or game 190. I mean, that's where we're at. It's like, so they have no rope as an organization, as a front office, as a coaching staff. They have no PR rope at all when they come out and say like, we're going to figure it out, whatever. Like nobody wants to hear it. Like this is not a fresh start. This is just everybody's angry.
Isn't that part of the issue? The front office says nothing. The front office says nothing. There has been nobody. Atkins doesn't come out. If they do come out, it's always the same platitudes that Schneider's giving. I think that's one thing that really pisses the fan base off because I'm on a lot of forums and there's a lot of angry people out there. But the big one is that Atkins never presents himself. And when he does, he's like a robot. Yeah. And people are kind of tired of the whole analytic approach to everything and the team-wide approach to doing everything, taking the jobs out of the manager's hand in certain respects. I think the fans are just sick and tired of it. I think they want something that's more old-fashioned again.
And then a lot of organizations, like they would kind of like man up in the off season. Atkins and Shapiro did the opposite. Yeah. They blamed it on Schneider. They blamed what happened in the playoffs on Schneider, said it was his call. Then they say, okay, Don Mattingly is the offensive coordinator, so that people stop talking about how they're in charge. So they were just like, well, I don't want to get into this spaghetti on my shirt. Like, so they're just like, I want all the blame in the dugout. And we're just the guys who oversaw the reno. Like we're the reno guys, those guys are the ones that are screwing up the team on the field. But don't you love how bright and red the home hardware signage behind home plate is? Like, and that's another thing that pisses me off. We're like, what an amazing renovation. This is great. And then every game I watch, I'm like, now I can just see the blaring red of home hardware in absolute just perfect crystallization. Like I can't even see the pitch. The home hardware red and yellow is just blaring in my face. That's
three
TD
signs in a row. But yeah.
To your point about the front office throwing Schneider under the bus at the end of last season, I tweeted at the time that, clearly there was a lot of dysfunction on this team. And I think that trickles down, right? Like, I think that, when the front office is willing to throw a manager under the bus for a decision that clearly wasn't solely made, by him. To what level of frustration is everybody feeling?
Because we can't
And
score
we
runs. Like, yeah, at the end of the
right.
day, it's like the whole thing was based on we cannot score runs at all.
Yeah.
So what are we going to galaxy brain our way into doing because we know we need to find a way to win 1-0?
I'm
And I mean,
curious.
all this talk of analytics, it's maddening also because there's so many moves that have been made by Schneider that I'm like, this kind of flies in the face of all analytics. Like, I mean, Ernie Clement at the plate, right? The best contact hitter on this team. 1 out, and they call for a sack bunt to score Jano. And I'm just like, why are you not, like, what are we doing? Why are you not letting him put the bat on the ball? Like it, and if you are calling for a sack bunt, like to bring him in home, why is Jano hesitating? Like the whole thing just tough to understand.
The old pinch catcher runner for a catcher. We're gonna pinch run a
my
catcher
God.
with another catcher is like it's a tough
Well, the two
situation
best
to have
pinch
to be in.
runners sit on the bench.
I'm actually curious. Our Seattle compatriot over here, does your team take care of things like through the front office and the manager like we do? I'm curious how other teams do this because I don't think this is a normal thing. I think our massive analytics are like, I would love to see how many people are employed underneath the general manager to make this team run. I'm thinking there's like 1,000 of them.
And
at
Jordy,
this
that is why we love that you with the Walk-Off Mariners have started joining us. Is to have an outside perspective is really nice because as Jays fans, it's easy to get the blinders on and like really get into this like panicked mode and like you just everything's such a pressure cooker. So when you look at the Jays from the outside and you see what's going on with I mean, the coaching staff is huge, and I know that every Major League Baseball team has a coaching staff that gets bigger and bigger because there's no cap on the money you can spend on outside staff, right? Whereas like there is that luxury tax everyone's worried about. Lord knows the Mariners, one of those teams. So from an outside perspective, just give a little comparison of what you view the front office of the Mariners having done and where the Blue Jays are at right now.
Well, I'll also start off by saying I just watched the Mariners win in the 9th, so I can't really match your guys' energy right now. But I do see some similarities in how Toronto is running the team because there is a lot of stuff that you see the Mariners doing that's pretty analytics forward. The one right now that is just really maddening and frustrating is Scott Service is committed to a fault to his lefty righty matchups, his splits. He will platoon, and it's at a point now where Josh Rojas, our best hitter, he started one game in the Atlanta series, and it's not like he's kind of our best hitter. He's far away our best hitter, but they're committed so much to platooning him, and it just doesn't make sense. And there definitely is a play between Scott Service and Jerry DiPoto because they go way back, right? These guys have been working together back since their Anaheim days. I guess Anaheim, Los Angeles, whatever you guys call it on this podcast. But they go far. They go so far back. So they're definitely in cahoots. Like, hey, we got to be working. We got to be platooning and stuff like that. So there definitely are similarities there. But more so, I think the issue with us is it's just they're really committed to protecting the young players almost too much where they don't want to throw them and get their feet wet. That's probably the biggest issue I see from the Mariners front office right now.
I wonder when it comes to having that loyalty, right? Like we were kind of talking about that, and you just mentioned it. Scott Service and DiPoto go way back. So do Shapiro and Atkins. And Joel, I'll go to you here because it's funny. I will give you credit because you do give credit when this front office does good. But also they have done a lot of ignoring of problems, it feels like, over the last 18 months, for such an analytically driven front office to look at the numbers and be like, it's all going to work out. it seems like an exercise in insanity. When you look at this front office and you see World Series winning general manager James Click just sitting there, the pressure's getting hot on Shapiro. And despite that loyalty, I truly do believe Shapiro will fire Atkins before he just lets them both go, right? Do you think that Rogers has the guts to get rid of Shapiro? Like to really gut this front office? Or do you think Shapiro has another another bulletproof vest on him to get through one last year and them given another opportunity to bring in a different general manager?
That'd be a hell of a business decision. Right? You're all finished with the renovations, and then you cut ties instantly. You're like, hey, it's business, buddy. You know, like that's kind of that kind of be interesting. If I ran the business, I just, like I said, I probably would have never cared about the renos, and I would put all that effort into making the best team around Bo and Vladdy and trying to maintain what 2021 was. Like, to me, all of this roots back to having youthful success and cap space. Youthful success and cap space. We had great offense. We brought in great pitching, and we had the ability to bring in great pitching to bolster that offense, right? But the fact that we maxed out ourselves from 2021, we spent $100 million, and the run differential started going down. Year by year, the run differential started going down because you were making sacrifices to try to maintain the 0 run inning defensively instead of put up the 6 and win a game in 1 inning, right? We had a team that would knock you out. We had a team, I think against Oakland, the 2021 team put up 11 runs on an out. I think that happened. They put up 11 runs on an out. And that mentality.
And they won the game. And they won the game.
Yes, and they won the game. They were down. They were down, I believe, 8-1 or something when they put up those 11. It was something ridiculous. So it's the concept of even 8-1, you're not out of it. And what does that do as a mentality of a hitter? How do you come up to the plate with that confidence? If the game is 150 years of confidence and down 8-1, you're like, we're not out. How does that make you feel day to day coming to the ballpark? We've got that ability to go off on anyone, attack any pitcher, beat anybody. Nobody can stop us offensively. That's a mentality to have. And then for you to be a young player, to come to the ballpark with that mentality, for that to slowly shift and watch the pieces go away and the hitting mentality go away and the dimensions change, and not to bolster you the way Baltimore did, but to almost hinder you. And you kind of sit back and all of those things kind of lay upon you as a young player like Bo and Vladdy. And you can see why, instead of them taking steps forward, they've stagnated where they should be in their primes, and they should be doing special things right now. Maybe all those things have a little bit of something to do with it.
Okay, so I'm going to give 2 pitcher staffs. These 2 pitcher stats. These pitchers are starters with the Toronto Blue Jays, and these are stats since June of last year. Okay, so pitcher A had 28 games started, 151 innings pitched, a 28% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate, and a 42% ground ball rate, 3.34 ERA, 2.97 FIP, and 105 stuff plus. Pitcher B, 26 games started, 145 innings pitched, 28% strikeout rate, 7% walk rate, 41% ground ball rate, 3.48 ERA, 3.41 FIP, and 100 plus stuff. Sean, any guesses on player A and player B?
Is A Bassett and B Kikuchi?
Jeff? Player A, player B?
I was gonna say Barrios and Kikuchi.
Yeah,
Joel?
That's what I think.
Yeah.
That was my
guess too.
Jordy, you want to take a stab at this?
I'm also on the Barrios Kikuchi train too.
Pitcher
I
A
wish I didn't
is
go first, man.
pitcher. Pitcher
Should have
A
said
is
Barrios.
pitcher A is Yusei Kikuchi.
I-
Pitcher B is the staff ace, Kevin Gausman.
Oh, mm.
Yusei Kikuchi has been the best pitcher on this Toronto Blue Jays staff for almost a full year.
He's getting better.
Yeah.
He's getting better.
That's
Now,
the thing.
Jordy, Yusei Kikuchi, a former Mariner, and he had his moments in Seattle. But realistically, when you look back on 2021, did you think there was any way that Yusei Kikuchi would reach where he's at right now? Or even 2020 back when he was pitching with the Mariners?
No, I did not. He came in, he was pretty hyped, and we're like, oh yeah, cool. We got another starting pitcher. It's gonna be great. And yeah, you're right. He did show some flashes, but for the most part, it was just really frustrating. And so it was not difficult to see him go. It was like, well, that was a failed experiment. And then when the Blue Jays signed him, I was like, whatever. Like if Seattle can't figure out what's going on with the guy, I find it hard to believe someone else is, because
Yeah.
not to hype him up, but Seattle is very good at taking pitchers and turning them into amazingness. So to see Kikuchi doing this is pretty surprising to me. But then again, right, it's just a matter of sometimes one person will see something that everyone else missed. So I am very surprised to see this. I did not expect it. So good on him. Good on him for doing the work, and good on the Jays for fixing him up.
I mean, a 6% walk rate, Jeff, that is night and day better than Yusei Kikuchi was in 2021.
That's
it is
elite.
It's elite.
It's elite. He's comfortable now. Like, they took away so much movement that he had in his delivery. I find a lot of the Japanese pitchers, sometimes when they come over here, have a lot of movement in their delivery when they get here, and they kind of fix that up as they go along. And I think it's also a mentality thing. We talk about mentality, but it also can go back to, I still give a lot of credit to Pete Walker for a lot of this stuff. I mean, he has turned around so many players while they've been here. He turned Robbie Ray into a Cy Young Award winner, and I think he's kind of pulled that same magic on Kikuchi. But I think Kikuchi's big thing now is that he believes in his stuff, because he has stuff. Like the movement that he has, his curveball that he's using, I think in the game it was anywhere between 35 and 40%. He used that curveball,
Which is crazy because Jeff, he wasn't using it.
Exactly. Like I don't think he used it at all in the first season, barely. And now it's like his go-to pitch. And having that coupled with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball on the left side, like that is something you just don't see. I'm at the point, like after the first year, I'm the very optimistic Jay guy, as opposed to other people. I'm very even keeled because I know it's an ebb and flow kind of thing. I was still in on Kikuchi because I could see the stuff. But when he started getting that curveball going in and believing in the movement on his fastball, knowing what he could do and believing in himself, it's like a night and day kind of thing. And I think we should honestly be thinking about extending him at this point. Like, I would give that boy an extension now.
And I agree with you, Jeff. I 100% agree with you. Sean, I can imagine you would be all right with them extending Yusei Kikuchi, but my question to you is that even going to be a possibility, or is he going to be moved at the trade deadline?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, that is even, that's the thing about the expanded playoffs, is when are you out of it? Right? You're not out of it for a while. You've got to be pretty. So I think organizationally, they're not even thinking in terms of selling off necessarily. Like, I don't think that they're going to sell off at all.
Jen, when does this team actually decide if they are sellers? Like, I kind of agree with Sean. Like, I feel like Atkins is going to go down with this ship. Can you see them trying to start somewhat of a rebuild at the deadline?
I think there's too much ego in this front office to do that, to be honest. I think they've stood behind their product. Whether they should have or not is irrelevant. I think they've stood behind it. And I think to be sellers at the deadline would be to admit that they had gone in the wrong direction, or that they had made mistakes. And I don't think they're ready to do that, to be completely honest. With regards to Kikuchi, I said it last week, extend Kikuchi. You know, which would, if they were going to trade him, would up his value if he was locked up long term. So there is that. You know,
a sign and trade. Interesting.
And
right?
half measure rebuilds don't work to me. It's like if you're doing this, you've got to go all the way.
Right.
If you're selling, you've got to fully sell. Like doing little mini sell offs here and like, oh, we're going to stay competitive for next year, but we're going to offload.
But it's worked so well for the Padres.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's gonna be teams out there that are like, sure, I'll take Kikuchi and Bo off your hands for a couple of prospects that'll make your fan base happy. But what does that do for us?
We're not getting prospects. If you make that trade, there's no prospects coming. I don't think you should. There's no way if you're going to trade Bo and Kikuchi, you better get some major league talent on that team. I don't think they're going to trade anybody.
They're going to say, well, but what is Bo doing? Bo's hitting under 200.
Well, I still look at 2015 when we were under 500 in July, right? Just for the trade deadline. And then we sold everything, Anthopoulos sold it all and got us in the playoffs. And I think that's what Atkins is thinking. I think that's what his mindset is, well, it's still May. And that's what he's thinking. And I don't think it's the right mindset.
Scenario was very different from where things are at right now, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't see something like that coming. They don't have the prospects for it, first of all. So that's not going to work. And Anthopoulos at the time knew he was out the door, right? Yeah. It was one last hurrah. Let's throw, push all the chips in because I'm out of here at the end of the year anyway. So however this goes, let's see. And I'm not suggesting to extend Kikuchi to trade him. That's not at all what I'm suggesting.
No.
I'm just saying that it makes sense from all perspectives to try to extend him. Would he want to stay here? I mean, I don't know. Would he have any loyalty to the team that quote unquote fixed him and believed in him? I have absolutely no idea. Right.
Well, he stayed here in the winter. His family loves it here. Apparently that's the one thing I think could be in his favor is that his family really likes being here.
Right.
So
but he also has Boris as a agent.
I think Boris took a big shot this offseason. Boris took a really big shot into his thing. So I don't think the Boris thing is as big of a deal now as it used to be. Not after this offseason.
Fair enough. But my question is because this was the original question was about trading or trade deadline. So my question is Ross Atkins the one you want handling that trade deadline?
No.
Like regardless of what direction it goes in, is he the one you want in that position? Do you trust him still? Do you think that he can either, if they're sellers, get back real value that will improve the future of this team? Or if they're adding, do you think that he can actually make the moves to add and 2015 style type of thing?
Well, not just for player evaluation, but the fact that do you trust him based off of his last trade deadline acquisitions?
Yeah.
Based off of what he's done come trade deadline and how much he's put forward into making those teams truly better in the aspects that they needed to get better, especially last year. We had specific needs
that weren't addressed.
Yeah, when we got Paul DeYoung.
He's a terrible trader in general. I don't think he's made a couple, but he's made good signings. I love the way he built the pitching staff. I'll give him that. But after that, what's he done?
I think you have to lean on it there with if you have good rapport with your pitching staff. And Pete Walker is a big element of this. Robbie Ray, J. Happ, the lefty whisperer that Pete Walker is something very important. And I think that when you look at Kikuchi, we saw an entire year. We saw an entire year of language disconnect, him working his mechanics, his pitch repertoire, truly finding out who he is in the major leagues at 31, 32, and finding now dominance, right? Dominance. And to me, what I've always looked at for him was that he didn't play on the WBC team for Japan. And he looks at that 2026 team and says, I want to be effective. I want to be nasty this year. I want to be nasty next year so that 2026 rolls around. I'm on that team playing for my nation in front of 100 million people. I think that he looks at that date. So I see him wanting to be effective beyond just signing a big contract, right? He wants to be dynamite for that beyond Major League Baseball.
Jordy, how much do you believe in track records of a front office? Because if you look at the Toronto Blue Jays front office, they've never really gone all out at the trade deadline and acquired what they needed to. They have pretty much stunk at player development when it comes to number one pitchers. I will give them some credit. They have developed some talent outside of that, but outfielders has been a blank hole. Do you feel like front offices can self-correct, or is this kind of the same thing as a player who's 6 or 7 years into their playing career and you turn their baseball card over and look at their career average and that's probably what you're going to get?
I think it can, but it does require a personnel change. I think you need someone to say, hey, it's not working right now. We're missing something. We got to go reach outside and grab someone, right? Like, I don't think that a GM is magically going to wake up one day and be like, hey, I can develop hitters now. But there is definitely, I don't think you can fix that, but you can definitely help your front office by going out and getting the right guys to do so. How often it happens, I don't know, because as we mentioned before, there's a lot of ego in front offices. So there's a chance they're like, nah, we're nailing it. We don't need this. We can't fix it. It's just broken.
Do you guys think
Sean,
is there anything, God, I was going to ask you, like, do you think there's anything to, because I go back and forth on it, the idea that, what was that article where it was sort of like other front offices rating front offices and the Jays didn't get a single vote. Not one
as a top 10 front
vote.
office. Yeah.
Like, so there was sources within every organization that voted on this and in their personal top 5, and the Jays didn't get a single vote from anybody who was polled on this. And I think there was like 12 other teams that didn't get a single vote, but it kind of tells you something, right? Like, you're one of 12 teams that other organizations look at and have no respect for, very little respect for. And those would be in conversations you're having with the GM. It would be like, on the phone, through email, whatever, like when you're talking baseball with them, you come away thinking that guy doesn't really know what the fuck he's talking about.
Well, when you have such a high payroll too, right? Like that's a problem.
No,
Yeah.
It is like, that's the thing, right? Is it's one thing to watch a bad team that's young, fun, and exciting and on the up climb, and there's lots of money still to be spent. But it is sure tough to watch an old, aging team with a huge payroll that finding the bright spots are sure difficult to do. And Jeff, I'll throw to you here. I know I brought up James Click, but the fact that he has been in the fold as long as he has, coming up on almost 2 years now, is this front office like rhubarb, where you can cut it down, but if you don't get rid of those roots, which is obviously Shapiro, it's just going to come right back?
Well, first of all, strawberry rhubarb pie, best pie ever.
Yes.
But
where are our strawberries, Jeff? Where the fuck are our strawberries?
Our strawberry. It's gonna have to.
All rhubarb and crust.
That's all rhubarb and crust. This pie's not even cooked.
I think the biggest thing with this team now, and I think it goes back to what Jordy said before, is a little bit, is that there's no chemistry anymore. Like, I know they broke up the Barrio and people were like the home run, and people are still on about the home run jack and all that kind of stuff. But I think that is a precursor to say, or it's a saying that there's no chemistry with this team anymore. Like, they don't play. I don't know if they play for each other. Like, it just seems like a whole bunch of individual players at this point that they're trying to fit into different holes. And we talked before, and when Jordy mentioned something about the front office, or Scott Cervais likes to go by like lefty righty matchups, that's a big thing with John Schneider, I've noticed as well. He loves that lefty righty thing. Like, if Schneider should be in and Biggio's been kind of, not doing so hot, Schneider should stay in the whole time, I think, or IKF for somebody.
Sure. If Kevin Kiermaier hits a home run in his first game back, sit him on the bench, right?
Exactly. So I think decision making is very disjointed now. I think there's too many Chiefs, not enough Indians at this point going in with the front office. I would blow it up. Honestly, I would blow it up. I'd say I would keep Shapiro, because I don't think so much of this is on him. He did what he came in here to do, and that was to redo the culture of the team in terms of the mechanisms, like the spring
And to
training facility.
give us the best home hardware sign behind home plate
I
of
want it to
any
be so
stadium in
bright red, I
baseball.
can't even see the pitch coming in.
The fact that in right center they have 3 TD signs in a row together boggles my mind. I don't
So
understand
symmetrical though, Jeff. So
that one. It is very.
symmetrical.
I
And
mean,
then
I
they give
do
us a
love.
really nice gray backsplash, like you're at your mother's kitchen.
I've never seen so many people so upset they can't see home plate lady anymore. That is one of the biggest things I have seen all years. Like, where's home plate lady? She's over there. Well, they gave her
She's there.
shitty seats. It's like, well, no, she chose the seat. It's like, I don't know. It's just, it's weird that, and this is what J fans are getting upset with. That's a big problem, right? I went to opening day. I love the new facilities. I love the way they've done things. I think it's a great experience. I can't wait till they can actually open the roof and make it an even better experience. I think Shapiro did a great job giving the best facilities. Even Shohei Ohtani even said it down in Florida. We have the best facilities. That's great. You can have the best facilities and a beautiful looking renovated ballpark. But if you got no one to use them properly, then what's the point? Why did you spend $400 to $600 million on all of this stuff if you're not developing players properly? If you're not getting people coming up? I think you're going to see a lot of low A guys developing really well. I think they've drafted a little bit better recently, but it goes back to not developing what you need to develop. They don't develop outfielders. They develop middle infielders. And the thing is, he develops middle infielders, Atkins does, because he thinks they're trade bait, because everybody wants middle infielders because they're the most athletic types. But if you're not trading any of them, then what's the point? Think of all these guys we have now below us that are knocking at the door. You got Orelvis is knocking, Barger's knocking, Will Robertson, the outfield's doing really
Yeah.
well. Like AAA guys are all knocking at the
Spencer
door, right?
Horwitz is like literally
Exactly.
leading AAA baseball
So-
in on base percentage right now.
Is he willing to trade anybody to either bring these guys up? Right? I don't think he is. Like, why develop like 15 possibly decent major league infielders if you're just going to keep them there? It just makes no sense to me.
Or you have an Santiago Espinal who's an all-star and you wait till he's literally worth the least amount possible before you
Yeah.
get rid of him, right? Is it that when do you
Exactly.
trade high on somebody, right? It's that
Like
that kind of
Silver
level.
Kirk, for
Slugger,
example.
They didn't
Alejandro
do it with
Kirk.
Exactly.
Alejandro.
right.
That to me is the biggest albatross on this team. I'm sorry, I've never liked Kirk. I don't believe in him at all anymore, and he's proving it to me more this season than ever before. I would have, like, when Vladdy needed to lose weight, he lost weight. When Santiago Espinal needed to put on muscle, he put on muscle. And I've seen pictures of Kirk from 2 years ago to now. He's actually fatter than he was. And I'm not trying to body shame the guy, but he's just really slow. And now that slowness is taking over the way he hits. He can't hit anymore. He has no power. I'm not going to say we should have traded Kirk because I guarantee nobody wanted him, because I think most other teams saw this happening, that Kirk is just going to crap the bed. I'm happy putting Jano in for 5 games at least, hoping he doesn't get hit in the wrist again, the other 15 times. But that's the other thing is, like, I think they rely too much on Kirk's 2021 season, for example. They're relying too much on guys. You talked about their track record. I think these guys rely way too much on track record. George Springer being another one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I was going to say the whole time you were talking, I was thinking this brings it right back to that conversation about George Springer, right?
Mhm.
Just poor valuation and in terms of, looking at the past and the weight that's being put on that and trying to project it into the future. Right.
Mhm.
And both, if George Springer's fall off was predictable, so was Kirk's.
Yep.
Right.
There were 2 things that were also predictable about Kirk. Also, obviously his weight, and how that plays as a catcher, having to rely on your knees. But the fact that right now the one skill that he has above and beyond anybody else right now is his frame.
Yes.
His framing is exceptional, right? He's very low to the ground.
Absolutely.
He brings that ball up and he gets
It
it's
buys you,
it's funny,
like to a starter, buys you like 2 low strikes a start
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
it's to the point where I watch games with people who never watched baseball before, and they get frustrated seeing the balls that he frames for strikes, and they criticize the game because they see the little outline and they go, "This game's terrible. Why did they fix that?" I'm like, "No, that guy's just really good at glove maneuvering. That's a
Yeah.
skill. And they're like, I want to watch another sport. I can't watch this stuff. They don't even have their game.
It's his
Like, and I'm
only
like, oh.
skill.
Right.
That's it.
And but it's a finite skill because the robot umps are coming. Right. You're
That's
already
exactly
getting right. So what was the skill to foresee in the future that would be required beyond that? And that's the arm. That's the evolution of the run game and the requirement of a cannon behind the plate for this new game that you're not allowed to check the runners as much and you have bigger bags and they can be endlessly aggressive and stolen base percentage is up 15, 20%. And it's just nuts. It's not that much. That's an exaggeration, but it's up to an insane amount that was the skill that you had to be able to look forward in the game to see. That's what we need more importantly than framing. Framing pays off right now, but it was almost like when the Blue Jays were overplaying the shift when they knew the shift was coming to an end. You know, it was kind of that like live or die by the thing that is finite in the game. And then where are you going to be? You know, where are you going to be when they went with, like, you knew Freddie Freeman, Corey Seager, these guys were going to excel in the new version of the game minus the shift. And then we were forced to go get the Dalton Varshows and the leftover left-handed players, the Brandon Belts whose hamstrings were incapable of playing a full season, right? Being the last pick. It's funny to go back to Moneyball because there's so many lines in Moneyball, like the last dog at the bowl is the one who dies, right? And we seem to be that situation. And Shapiro is sure enough the antagonist in that movie, and that movie's protagonists play out of the worst damn stadium that you could ever imagine, right? They don't care about the stadium. The stadium design doesn't mean anything. It's the culture of the team. It's getting that George Springer-like player in David Justice to wrap, you know, his head around a mentality of how he has to play now later in his career. And it's kind of like we're right there right now. And we almost need to, but you know, we got Shapiro at the helm. So,
but ownership cares about that stadium and those renovations, right? Those boxes or whatever you call those spaces now that are, you know, very expensive seats, right? Yeah, that's exactly what they are. They are money makers. This
they're
is
not even
where,
done yet.
Pardon? No.
They got all those clubs to put underneath the seats, serving all the booze and stuff after the game. It's going to be like Leaf games is what's going to happen now.
Right. Absolutely. It's exactly Raptors and Leafs games. That's exactly what it is. And that's where a lot of the money is coming in, right? It's not fans sitting up in the 500s. They don't, that's not what's bringing in the cash, right? So ownership absolutely does, in this situation, absolutely does care about the stadium and the renovations. But I totally understand Joel's point, but that's just not where this ownership is at.
Well, I think that's our biggest X factor right now is we've never had an owner that's actually a guy. You know what I mean? Like it was always Labatt's, it was Interbrew or whoever. And then Rogers came and it was still kind of Rogers. But now Ed is trying to make a name for himself because after all the brouhaha that went on with Rogers, we now have, I don't want to say he's not Steinbrenner, but we have a guy now who maybe cares about the team, like he cared about the renovations and all that stuff. But now that he's got all of his little toys fixed, does he care enough about the team to make the big decision like to fire Shapiro, if that's what he wants to do? That's the thing. That's a big question mark for me is what Ed Rogers is thinking, because we have no idea. And it's the first time we've actually kind of had to think about it.
So you think he can keep Shapiro and fire Atkins?
I think he could. I think more people blame Atkins than Shapiro for everything because he's the GM guy. Like I know it has to go through Shapiro, but if you're going to make the change, like I like what Shapiro did. Maybe that's what this whole thing was. Maybe this regime was there to rebuild all the mechanisms we needed to make a good team. Now we get rid of them and bring in a new team to actually push them towards actually getting to a World Series.
Okay, so
because that's all they've done.
We are at the 1 hour mark right now. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to go around the horn here and talk about way too early trades that might fix this team a little bit, if it's even possible. And if that's not the route you wish to go, then answer my question of, would you be all right with James Click taking over, or would you like to see this organization go outside of the internal hire and find a general manager that is going to put his own stamp on this team and kind of gut it and start from new? And you can go whichever way you'd like with this question. I'll start with you, Joel. I'm going to give an example here because I know the bullpen is on fire. The Blue Jays have gone to
Bad way,
Oakland.
the wrong way.
The wrong way. On fire as in they are burning to the ground like a house on fire. Yes, thank you for clearing that up, my dude. Okay, so they do have quite a track record with winning trades against the Oakland Athletics. Obviously, this bullpen is in some big time trouble. Mason Miller has been an absolute stud in this Oakland bullpen. Oakland has shown over the last couple of years that even sending down Ruiz there when he was, led the AL in stolen bases last year, came out of the gate hitting 400, and then they stick him in AAA. I don't think winning is at the top of the Oakland Athletics to-do list. Is something like going out and maybe moving a prospect or two, and yes, it probably would to get a guy of the caliber of Mason Miller. It might cost a guy you don't wish to see go, but maybe a Mason Miller, and then you bring home Ross Stripling as your long man, something that this team just hasn't had. That might help this team out. So Joel, I'll go to you. Is there a trade you think that can happen that would actually kind of right this ship? Or would you rather answer the question of internal or going outside the organization for a new GM?
That one.
Okay.
That's the one I would pick. Trades obviously to be made. Like trying to pilfer Oakland is interesting right now because Oakland is kind of in the middle of like a real life major league story where they're like on the move, but they're in contention, and they have this like rookie fireballer. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like major league.
It's like, is Jake Taylor there? Like, is he, like, it's a weird, all these, there's like 17 and 17, right? Last time I checked, they were like 500.
They're 500. They're literally in the middle of the AL West, a very difficult division.
It's another one of these points that also needs to be made is that the easy wins that we thought were there. You brought up Detroit having a solid record at this point in the year. Kansas City is a baseball team.
Yeah,
that's a baseball team this year. They're no joke. That's a baseball team, and they are not they're not 7 out of 9 wins anymore. You don't go up against them and just you're like, oh, here comes Kansas City, Detroit, Oakland. You look at that section of your schedule and you're like, oh, we'll clean up there. We'll flash an 800 winning percentage. It's not the case. Those are hard games now, right? So it's like how the bottom has taken a step up, and what there's extra place for those wild card spots, but there's other teams that are really vying for it this year. There's teams
and now the Astros are bad, except against us.
Yeah, that can't last, right? That can't last. That's this weird thing there that
right.
All of a sudden that they're just going to catch fire, and the good way. But what trade is out there? What trade is out there?
I mean, we just watched the Padres go out and get Luis Arraez, and that was
that's an interesting move. Like Marlins are pretty much saying that they're kind of that's a give up trade to me from the Marlins. So I would look to the Marlins as a team that is more able to. Who's the big guy that you can pull out? Like they have Josh Bell still.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that true? It's like, who do you look at in that organization that you might be able to bring over here?
I mean, all their pitching's injured.
Yeah, right. That's a hell of a situation. I would be looking at like we trade a lot with the Mets. Mets are weirdly in the same stage of contention that we are. So is there some sort of mutual gain situation? You look at the weakness that the Mets have. I'm always looking at the National League right now because there's so many, like I said, there's so many teams that are actually in contention right now in the American League that who would you kind of go with? Houston isn't giving up, even though their records are that way, right? So I'm probably looking to the NL, and then just for I don't know. I just felt I feel like when it comes to this team and how they're run, the track records on these star players were a big deal for me. locking them up long term, seeing them flourish, seeing you build a team around the players that are going to set franchise records, right? Like, you got, I'm sitting there in 2021 and being like, wow, Bo's a guy, if you build around him properly, 3,000 hits. Vladdy's a guy who sets all your franchise records for the next 30, 40 years. If you build these guys right. And to sit here with months left of their tenure and they're not locked up and they're struggling and their values are set low. And what's happened with Nate Pearson, what's happened today with Manoah. And you're just like, well, when's enough? When do I have to say, I can't trust you with these players? I can't. Like the players that are succeeding are going beyond the hitting coaches. They're saying, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to do what works for me. And that's where the success is being had. Like at some point, you have to look and being like, is bringing rookie managers in with a young team a good idea? You got 2 rookie managers in a row that have no track record on having any. You need the experience to come from somewhere. You know, if Springer's not going to step up and be a leader, which he really hasn't been, he's kind of a goofy guy who's laughing all the time. Still laughing with a 580 OPS, but you see him in pregame and he's goofing around. That's no captain. Who's the captain of the team? And culture, what's the culture? So all of these things, it's all of these different levels. The players aren't performing well. The stadium design didn't help. The management isn't working. Well, the front office has to go.
Jordy, when you look at the way baseball is going right now, and we just watched Dipoto lock up and put some risk into Julio Rodriguez. And obviously, this is a dude that the Mariners plan to build around for a very long time. And you know what signing these young players to long-term contracts has done? It is made free agency weaker. We're not seeing those studs out there anymore. How did you feel about locking up Julio long term? And when you look at the Blue Jays, do you feel that they kind of dropped the ball with Bo and Vlad, and that maybe some of their struggles right now is just this front office never really showed belief in them?
Yeah, the Julio extension was amazing. I loved it. It was funny too
because it's big for a fan base too, right?
Absolutely, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Russell Wilson just left the seat, was just traded out of the Seahawks. So Seattle didn't have a superstar. The Mariners hadn't had a superstar since Felix Hernandez was gone. So we finally have one. But of course, with the ownership, we're always like, well, they're going to leave soon anyway. Everyone does. So when he signed this extension, it's like, yes, we've got him. This is our guy now. It's super exciting. And yeah, like it's going to be a very expensive deal, but at the same time, it's going to be totally worth it. And to your question about, if like the Jays should have been doing that, absolutely, because Vladdy is Toronto baseball. I have a lot of non-baseball fan friends, and he is like what Jose Bautista was. He's the only player most people know, and they don't even know him as a baseball player. They know him as the guy who's selling peanut butter sandwiches to them.
And A&W.
Crustables.
Yes.
A&W.
Okay, but I'm gonna bleep. Like that's how you know the season is going to shit, because none of us find that funny. Like we should all be like, okay, but I'm gonna bleep, and then we should be loving that.
Yeah.
No, that's still funny. That's still funny.
And we're just like, that's not very funny, actually. That him trying to speak English and calling them burger boys, and as funny as I thought it would. It's not as funny as if we were up 10 games, you know?
Yeah.
130 RBIs last year.
Jeff, is there a trade that can save this or right the ship? Or are you answering external or internal general manager question?
I think there always is. I think there always is going to be something that can fix it. Are these the guys that can make that trade? I don't think so. Like I said, Atkins has been great with signing guys, like starting with Hyun-Jin Ryu and all that kind of stuff. He's been great at negotiating, getting players to come to Toronto, which was always a big stigma. I don't think it's as big of a stigma now as it used to be. I mean, the tax rates, all that kind of stuff, that gets worked out, whatever. Some people still don't want to come here. That's fine. It's a foreign country, kind of, I guess. But he doesn't. It's like, what can you get rid of that's going to and bring something back that's going to make us better? Right now, like I'm just for getting rid of the dead weight. You know, if you can trade the dead weight for something, that'd be great. Like Alek Manoah, Alejandro Kirk, and then throw in some prime middle infielders and maybe get yourself a stud outfielder. Or before Trout got injured, I would have actually considered trading for him. I would have traded one of Blower Vladdy and some guys in the minors to get him. And you can send Kiermaier out with that trade to get rid of Kiermaier, because I think honestly Kiermaier is going to be an albatross again, even though he's not being paid much. He's just filling in a spot. I think we might actually see him get traded to bring up Will Robertson at some point along the way, but I don't think there's anything major you can do. I don't want to get rid of anybody in the starting staff, and we don't have anybody in the minors pitching wise that anybody really wants. So who can you trade? Or Elvis, maybe. He's probably at this point the most attractive piece that you could sell that's in the minor leagues. And on the major league roster, I mean, the only ones I want to trade are the ones that ain't doing anything. And if you got those are the guys, and you're not going to get nothing. So I think it's what Kami said. It comes down to the culture. The culture is just broken here. You need to change the culture. And to change the culture, you got to have massive sweep outs. Let somebody else come in who's not maybe personally more involved with Bo or Vladdy or any of the other players. Somebody can come in more objectively about how they're playing and make moves off of that. Right now, I think Vladdy's coming around personally. So he's not the one I would go.
The numbers show that actually.
Yeah. Bo, I can't figure him out. And I feel sorry for Kami. I love Bo. I do, but he's made almost as many errors now. He's made all of last year, right? He's batting
completely checked out.
Yeah.
Double plays are ridiculous. This is the worst Bo Bichette I've ever seen.
And I'm wondering if maybe he doesn't want to be here. Maybe it's finally come down to Bo doesn't want to be in Toronto. Maybe he just hates being here. Maybe he doesn't like the culture that's developed over time. And he's like, I'm just checking out. You can trade me. I don't fucking care anymore, because this is not what it was 2 years ago. This is not what I signed up for.
It's funny you bring that up because I'm sorry,
Joel, go ahead.
Scott. I just want to say that it's interesting because we sit here and we analyze so much, but a player like Bo does probably twice as much analyzing, 3 times as much. So anything that we sit here and talk about, is run through his head by everybody in his camp and by himself, just by seeing what's around him and the experiences that he's had. And to come out of the off season or back-to-back off seasons and saying there was a chance that this team could have been special if the right moves were made, and see that those moves weren't made to bolster what they had. Like, I really feel like losing Simeon hurt him. And I know that this is weird to say, but I feel like losing Chapman kind of hurt him. He had that person next to him that was that veteran anchor that he could lean on. And not that IKF isn't that, but they're just rotating whoever the third baseman
I was
is.
just going to say, are you telling me a revolving door at third base doesn't feel like there's support there for him?
Right? Like him on the infield, he's just seeing everybody's new every day. And like, who's pitching him the ball? It's somebody different every single day. So that,
I think that's our biggest issue now is I know they love the versatility of players of playing different positions. I think we've gone way too far on that versatility aspect of things. And it's great to have your guys on the bench that can do it, but I don't want all of my, half of my starters to be wandering the infield, the outfield all the time because they're playing different positions all the time. I just don't think it works.
And
Jen,
Bo would Chapman
ahead,
never
Sean.
have to make a play going to his left. Like Bo never had to go to his left, stop, and then fire. Those were Chapman's balls. Like for as long as he was there, that was Chapman's. So Bo had to handle stuff coming at him or to his left where he was already, So when he has to move to his right to make a play, you get to see that he doesn't have great arm strength. He's a little low confidence. Like he's a subpar shortstop. And when he's not hitting, when he's under 200, then it just looks like this is a bad shortstop right now. You're bad up the middle, right where you can't be bad.
Yeah, no. And that's, I mean, it has been talked about ad nauseum about the lack of strength in Bo Bichette's arm. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there with Matt Chapman really, he really protected that weakness, like Bo didn't have to throw against his body like he has been this year. And we've watched him not have that strength. We've watched him hit his spots a few times going against his body, but just not being able to get enough juice on the ball to get there and
he
make
likes
the
the
run.
sidewinder. He likes
Yeah.
the sidearm Tony Fernandez.
Yeah, the
throw,
nice big looper. Yeah.
and it misses half the time.
All right, Jen. So, is this ship writable? Is there something like, listen, I know this has been a pretty negative show so far, and I mean, we did really just watch them blow this series. So I mean there is some recency bias here. We've had a really rough April. They're still 16-19. By no means are they out of it. But I did mention it off the top of the show, right? They need to go 16-9 in May just to be on an 89 win pace. Is there something that can help get them there? Is there something that you look around the league and think maybe if they did this, bring in a fresh blood, it can change the culture? And do you agree that the culture is broken?
So Matt Chapman came up before I had a chance to bring him up. When Joel said, who's the captain of this team? My answer was Matt Chapman. Not that he's here anymore, but he was the captain of this team. I mean, he was the one, as you said, taking Bo under his wing. He was the one, professional or unprofessional, was willing to tell off Schneider in the dugout, right? Like that takes something to be the one to do that, right? And I don't think that there's anybody on this team right now who is in that position or even wants to be in that position. I'd like it to maybe be Dalton Varsho. I don't know. But I don't think that there's anybody who is there or willing to be that guy. And so I keep saying, like, I really don't know where they go from here, right? I really don't know. I don't think it's a matter of just adding one guy to this team and that turning things around, because I think there's too many things that need to be addressed that should have been addressed in the off season, that should have been addressed last trade deadline, right? They should not be in a position where their fifth starter is a guy who is going to be on an innings limit, okay, in Yariel Rodriguez. He's going to be on an innings limit. And the next best option is Alek Manoah, right? Like this, they should not even be in that position. So no, they're not out of it. And it's baseball and it's a long season. And I don't know where this season is going to end up. To your question about James Click, or should they go outside the organization? I really think that they've run out of rope on Ross Atkins, or that Ross Atkins has run out of rope here. I mean, you can fire the manager, but then Ross Atkins would be on his fourth manager, right? And I know he inherited John Gibbons, but he picked the next two. And, if you're now going to bring in a yet another one that is handpicked by Atkins, I think at that point, you've given him way too much, way too much rope at that point.
I mean, it's baseball. It's 3 strikes, you're out. He's already over that.
Right. Absolutely. And we've seen, I agree. And it's not that he's done everything poorly, right?
No.
We know that. He has not done everything poorly. So I want to just set that aside.
I think he was even on the right track.
In some instances, absolutely, right? I mean, but in saying that, this team is worse than it was. And who gives a flying flip about making a wild card when you're going to just, exit said series in such an abysmal fashion season over season? So, regardless of the direction that this next trade deadline is going to go, why did you bring in James Click if it isn't for this contingency plan, right? If it's not for that. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, Atkins, you've had your opportunity. You know, maybe you let James Click handle this trade deadline, and then you can evaluate from there.
So fire him mid-season.
Yeah, get rid of him.
Oh yeah.
Out of curiosity, because I don't know, have there been general managers fired mid-season?
Jerry
I'm sure
Ansick for the Mariners.
Yeah?
Jerry DiPoto got hired mid-season.
Gotta be the Yankees.
Back in 2016.
Okay, right. Okay.
I don't think the Jays ever have, that's for sure.
No, and to be honest, I don't think it's going to happen. Right.
No.
I don't think that this is the likely scenario, but you know, whichever direction they're going to go in here, I don't know that this is the guy you want steering that ship anymore. I really don't. I feel like he's had his opportunity. And you know, unless they turn it around tomorrow's an off day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And absolutely go on a run. I don't think that this is the guy that you want, you know, making more decisions.
Yeah.
Well, here's the one I was wondering about. People are talking about replacements for Schneider because I think that's the big thing that will happen. If it keeps up, Schneider's going to lose his job, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing that we can say probably will happen. Do we want Don Mattingly taking that job? Because people keep talking about Mattingly.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Like it really is.
But he's part of the whole culture. You know what I mean? Like, so you put Mattingly in there. What is he going to do that's any different than what's being done? Like, one thing I have noticed with the hitting is that I don't know it. I know he's trying to change their approach, and I can see it. I can see some tangible results of changing the approach of some guys. And some guys are taking it to heart, which is great. But Mattingly as a manager was never really that good. I mean, he had the Marlins, which kind of sucked. I mean, he was with the Dodgers. He wasn't the greatest manager in the world. He had the Dodgers, so I don't even know if he's the one. I think if you're going outside the organization right now, you're going outside the organization for a manager. And you want somebody like you know, just for not him, but like a Terry Francona or somebody like that, somebody who is a manager. It's one thing the Jays never really did. We've always kind of been internal, except for when we had what's his face in the Phillies back in the day, Fregosi. Fregosi may be the one guy you brought in that had a track record. But other than that, it's always been Buck Martinez, John Gibbons, John Schneider. You know, all these guys who are
the guy that lied about being in Vietnam. That was
right. Hey,
Tim Johnson. Yeah. But you know what? That's what I mean. Like, we've never really had, since Bobby Cox, we haven't really had a guy who's been like a hardcore, I've managed a lot kind of guy. And I think that's what we need.
It's
Sean,
interesting
when you look, sorry, Joel, go ahead, bud.
I was just gonna say the opportunities been out there, like the way that the Yankees bolstered Boone by having Brad Ausmus behind him now, and like Ron Washington, that type of guy, or even Bruce Bochy was out there just sitting there before Texas swooped in and said, "Hey, do you want to manage again?" And what kind of mentality that guy has had on world championship success. Right, there's world championship managerial pedigree out there that has been successful with young teams and building the last kind of a true dynasty out there. That manager was just sitting there, and the wherewithal of Texas to go say, "Hey, Bruce, you want to get out there and we'll build a team that will be competitive when we go out there and spend, and we're gonna make a world championship team in pretty much 2 years." So it's just like it really baffles me that, and then to be sitting there now at the 30 game mark and be thinking about managers. Well, no, there's a time and place for that. It's the off season when these guys are sitting there available, and you can go take somebody off of another staff and say, "Hey, we're offering you a head coaching job here. We'd like, you know," and it's really, really tough to do it now, but it probably should have been done many times, and definitely not with rookie managers who have no pedigree or experience.
Well, and this goes back to the question of loyalty, right? Because I think John Schneider, it was always assumed, was going to end up being the manager of this team at some point, right? That once, you know, Bo and Vlad made their transition to the big leagues and were like, you know, in place, that John Schneider was then just going to take his rightful place behind the bench. And, you know, is that the way you really want to run an organization? You know, is that everybody just, you know, expecting to be handed those positions because of team loyalty?
Why does he not just smile?
When you, sorry, Joel, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt so much, Scott, but he just seems to smile every damn time something bad happens. When's the moment where he snaps, like you said, Jen, with Chapman? Like Chapman is
Yeah.
the one to passionately say, like, why are we pitching to this guy? He's the only guy who's going to hit us in that Ohtani situation.
Yeah.
Where are those managerial moments between Schneider and the players where that 19th double play in a row happens from Bo and he's sitting down and you cut to the bench and you should see Schneider like this, like pissed off? I haven't seen it. I don't think
I want to see some. I don't want him to, you know, there's a difference obviously between like throwing stuff and throwing your players under a bus, but I'd like to see some emotion from this guy, right? I'd like to see him wear the frustration a little bit, you know, like
post-game interviews are maybe more frustrating than the play itself. You don't know where you're more frustrated.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear about it out of his lips anymore.
Yeah, we're gonna be fine.
Sean,
we're gonna be fine.
I'm curious on I'm curious, Sean, on when you look at last season, 162 games, the problems with this team apparent, right? Everybody know. We're still talking about it right now. You've been on Long Toss a dozen plus times, and it feels like we're constantly talking about the offense and the lack thereof and how difficult it's been to get blood from this stone. Do you think it's hubris at this point? Like, is it ego of this front office? And I would say even organizational wide to look at that, look at the analytics, be like, we got it right. This will eventually turn the tides and get to it. We're going to run it back. Like, is that the problem?
It's definitely a huge part of it, right? The hubris and the ego, because what was, I mean, the thing that Shapiro said in the offseason that really caught my attention that I thought, like, only an egomaniac surrounded by other egomaniacs would say that, where he said, where he was being asked about Ross, about Atkins, and he said, continuity is a competitive advantage. And that was it. Like, it was like, continuity is a competitive advantage. So getting rid of somebody is where if we just keep him, we're at a competitive advantage just by having the same people in place. And then that was the end of his answer to that. There was no sort of like justification of his track record, or
that's actually the same motto as the umpires union.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, well, that molds perfectly because we're the first organization to try to go with like robo GMs. You know, like because with our organization, it feels like you get rid of John Schneider, who gives a shit? What's changed? What's fundamentally changed? Don Mattingly is there. The khakis are still there. The briefcase guys are still there. You bring in you know, a GM replacement in-house for Atkins. It's going to be run the same. I feel like, you know, it has to be all the way. It has to be, the whole building has to come down in order for this to be run a different way. Because I mean, when I heard that, like, continuity is a competitive advantage, and that is my defense of my general manager after what we've seen the last year. It's like, that's all you've got to say, is that if we made a change, then we'd have to learn new names, and, you know, like, it would take us a couple months to catch up on, like, who's the girl who brings me coffee, and who, you know, like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, it just angered me to think that, like, this is what he's thinking about right now, is that if we just keep everything the same, then we're at an advantage. Well, you're not at an advantage if you have the wrong people in place. If the continuity that you're touting is making bad decisions and have made bad decisions for years, then you're not at a competitive advantage just by keeping things the same. So I thought that was, you know, informative as to where his mind is at.
You know, I would go and say, we were talking about last season in the offseason. We always talk about how much they didn't do in the offseason. The one thing I will give Atkins, we want to keep some things, you know, positive here, is there was nobody on the free agent market I would have signed. Not one as a hitter. There was no, like, look at Cody Bellinger. He's wallowing right now. You know, all these guys, I mean, maybe Tommy Pham or something like that for low money, or a Med Rosario for low money, fine. But if you're looking for an impact bat to sign, there wasn't any. And that's doubles down on the problem that Atkins doesn't make good trades.
And that's like what Scott was saying about how free agency has changed fundamentally,
like,
where like, you don't
we need
the off season with 6 or 7 guys that you're going to pursue.
We need a trader.
Nobody.
Atkins is a signer. We need a trader. That's what we need. Because if that's the way free agency is going, we need somebody who knows how to make good trades. That's the guy we need to make changes here. because
Okay.
because like you said, they're signing all these young players to long contracts, 10-year contracts, right? So now that's eliminating a lot of people. All you're going to be left with is that mid-tier guy, the guy in his 30s, Matt Chapman, for example, right? And people wanted to sign Chapman. Would we sign Chapman now? I wouldn't. I mean,
So
I loved him as a person, and like Jen said, as a leader on the team, that's great. But IKF is doing just as well at this point. You know what I mean? So if we are going to make that culture change, that's the culture change that needs to be made. We got to stop thinking about signing people. Everybody's so upset we didn't sign anybody. There was nobody to sign.
And I guess you got to give them credit for, like, IKF and Turner haven't been bad. I mean,
Yeah.
No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
I had a guy actually tell me online that IKF in his quote unquote astronomical contract was the worst signing in the history of the Blue Jays. He said this to me. I'm like, look, man, you want a Gold Glove? I know it's a 2020 Gold Glove, but it's still Gold Glove.
Yeah.
But he's not gonna hit for power, but he's at least gonna hit, which Chapman didn't do,
Like
and he's gonna play
BJ
great
Ryan
defense.
didn't exist.
Exactly.
Ryan, my God.
Oh man.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do right now. We're going to take a hard left turn, and for a few minutes here, we're going to talk about a very good team. The Seattle Mariners. This streak just got broken today. They still won today though, but like Jordy mentioned right off the top, they've had 20 earned runs allowed over their last 21 starts, less than a run a game, which is absolutely insane. This is a team that has won 6 series in a row, and they've allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in 21 consecutive games, which ties a record with 1917 Chicago White Sox. Like,
Wow.
this is the second longest such streak in a single season since earned runs became a stat in 1913. Like, what this pitching staff is doing, and I know, Jordy, you kind of touched on it, that there is one thing that your organization does very well, and that is develop pitchers. And that when you watched Yusei Kikuchi go to the Jays, you were kind of like, well, if the Mariners can't fix them, good luck. But let's talk the Mariners for a second here. The AL West is wide open, and the Mariners are starting to show themselves as a real contender to win this division. Jordy, I'm going to throw to you first here as the Mariner expert. Where are you at on your team? They have definitely turned things around. Are you worried about Julio right now? Where are you at? You're muted, my man.
There we go. I'm not concerned about Julio right now. He's not going to hit 37 home runs like he did last year. But if you look at the 2 seasons we've had Julio, he didn't hit his first home run in his rookie season until like May. And last year he had maybe like 3 home runs up to this point. So he's going to go on an absolute power tear here pretty soon. He's not the one I'm concerned about. Most of the rest of the offense, though, is concerning. Because, yeah, we've all heard how legendary this run of starting pitching is. It's like, oh, we can win a game. All we need is 2 runs and we win. And the problem is we're still struggling to get 2 runs. Like, it's one of my favorite stats that came out during this pitching run is after the Arizona series, and Cespedes Barbecue tweeted, how good is Seattle's pitching? The Mariners hit 175, 232, 358 with a 35% strikeout rate over the last week and went
Good
5-2.
Lord.
It
Good God.
It was painful to watch, and it is starting to turn around somewhat, but there's some guys that we don't want to waste this, because as a Mariner fan, I have seen some amazing pitching wasted by a complete lack of offense. And right now we're at risk of doing that because they're not going to pitch like this forever. This is unsustainable. It's not going to have a huge drop off, but when it does come back down to earth and we're throwing Mitch Haniger out into right field every day, all of a sudden here comes the Texas Rangers, or even maybe Houston gets hot again, or Oakland goes out and trades for someone, which that's totally a plausible thing. That was a joke, you guys. But no, it is concerning, but at the same time, I do want to ride the vibe train. It feels weird to complain about it, but until that happens, I'm just gonna be all smiles.
Jen, Seattle sits at the top of the AL West right now, and Jordy did just touch on it. We watched the Blue Jays make the playoffs last year with very little offense and on the back of pitching. When you look at the Seattle Mariners, they are similar in their construction, and they have struggled with offense. Do you think that they can, and Jordy said that it's not sustainable, but I guess my question to you, is it sustainable?
I mean, maybe. I don't think, you know, somebody used the term ebbs and flow earlier in terms of a baseball season, right? And so, you know, at some point they will come back down to earth, but by how much? And, you know, can their offense get clicking, right? Like that's really what you're looking at over the course of 162. So you know, I don't know if it's sustainable. But enjoy that ride while it lasts at the bare minimum, right? Because
Absolutely.
I think, you know, I think Jays fans would gladly switch places.
I think you are correct. Now I'm gonna go to you here, Sean, and I just want your opinion on the Houston Astros because they currently sit 12-22. They're 7 games back of the Seattle Mariners. It's May, what is it now? 6th? 5th. It's May 5th.
Yeah.
The Houston Astros have gone to the ALCS for 7 straight years. Is this the year that they're not contending to win this division?
No, I mean, I think that they'll end up contending. I think that they'll be back there. Seattle, I mean, my memory of Seattle over the years is we have these conversations about the Mariners where it's like, can you believe what the Mariners are doing? And 1 month it's good and 1 month it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's sort of like, I can't believe the Mariners are on this run. And then the next month they'll be like, can you believe the Mariners can't win a game?
Can you believe the Mariners traded their closer?
Yeah. So with Houston, I mean, there's been very little personnel changes. I don't think anybody's there is aged out. Like, I don't think Altuve's aged out yet. I don't think anybody's at a point where it's like, yeah, that I don't know if anybody in the Houston system right on their for starting. I don't know if anybody is in the Springer zone where it's
Jose
like
Abreu.
Abreu. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's not there anymore, so
Yeah, he's down in
Complex
the
league.
Manoah leagues.
The Manoah leagues.
Joel, do you believe in the Seattle Mariners to be able to pull off a division title?
Oh yeah. I think with the Mariners right now, their incredible pitching kind of coincides with how that ballpark plays early in the year. It's hard to score runs. So that goes for the pitching staff, get the advantage in pitching, but the hitting has to deal with it being tough to hit home runs in Seattle early in the year. When it gets warmer, that's when Julio starts rolling. So as Julio's offense comes up, the pitching will kind of come down to normal. But then if you're in contention at the end of the year when it cools back down again, that pitching staff should be rolling again, right? Because like I said, it's tough to really score runs in Seattle. What they, you know, they're kind of coming off that same situation where it's interesting to see what a team is with Teoscar Hernandez in the lineup and without. He's a 200 strikeout guy, but he's an RBI guy, you know. And when Teo and Julio were really rolling during that winning streak last year, you could pretty much just rely on them for the offense to completely carry you. So it's kind of that situation where, you know, Mitch Haniger, Ty France, like JP Crawford hasn't really hit the way that he hit last year. But if those guys hit and come back to what they should probably produce, that's going to be a team that's in contention for that division all year, especially off, you know, Brian Wu coming back and solidifying that pitching staff, right? It's just, it's pretty nasty stuff.
Jeff, we did just talk. Oh, sorry, Jordy, go ahead here.
I was just going to say JP Crawford is probably on the DL for another like 2 weeks anyway. So Demo is our shortstop. Dylan Moore.
Yeah. So Jeff, we just talked about trade possibilities with the Jays. When you look at the Mariners and we've seen how DePoto has operated throughout the last few years, which is at the deadline, he'll make moves, but they're kind of interesting because he trades guys out that are like really substantial pieces from their team, gets guys back. And I mean, Jordy touched on it. Rojas has been absolutely incredible. So yes, they did move their closer, to the Diamondbacks last year, but it really did kind of work out overall. Although when you do look at the Mariners just missing the playoffs last year, I mean, they had that blow and save run of what, like 7 in a row or something like that.
There was a lot.
It was a lot. So, Jeff, can you see the Mariners actually getting to the trade deadline, being a real contender for this division, and going for it at the deadline?
Yeah, I think they have the capabilities. First of all, I think they have a better farm system than we've got, and I think they have more pieces down there to trade to get people that they need. But the one thing, when we've talked about this, I'm looking at the batting averages for the top 5 guys. And Julio Rodriguez is leading the team with a 261 batting average. Number 5 is Jorge Polanco at 193. So if your top 5 batters are there, they obviously know where the needs are, right? Jerry DePoto loves to trade. I've never seen a GM who loves to make trades more than DePoto does. And then we talked about culture and things and chemistry. I think, like you said, if he trades a good guy, but he's getting good guys in return, maybe that's a chemistry thing. Because they seem to play well. They seem to enjoy playing together. That when you watch Seattle play, they like being together. And that's one thing I've always noticed about them, and that they just seem to be always playing for each other. I think Ty France can come back. I think Mitch Haniger was just a stopgap because they got rid of Kelenic. He's very much a guy who will make a trade when it needs to be done. The complete opposite of us. And that's why I think the Mariners have a way better chance. And I think they have the right GM in there to do it. I love Scott Servais as a manager. I think he's a great manager as well. They've got some guys like Cal Raleigh, low average, but he's got power, and he's killed us specifically. Cal Raleigh has killed the Jays. I honestly think they have a great chance. I mean, I like them better than most people in that division at this point. I don't count the Angels. I just don't. For obvious reasons. I think Oakland will settle back again. When you were talking about, go back to Oakland for a second there. I don't think they'll trade anybody like that, because they have to have a decent team. Because if they're going to go to Portland, which is still kind of up in the area anyway, but if they're going to do that, I don't think they can afford to be trading like really good players in order to get people to come to the stadium. That being said,
Sacramento.
Well, there was Sacramento.
Sacramento
Pardon me,
temporarily.
Sacramento. Right. It should be Portland. But what I'm saying is, like, Seattle seems to have everything in place better than anybody else does. Houston's had a really bad part with their pitching staff, has been really bad because a lot of guys have been injured. That's part of their issue. Pitching and defense, to me, always are the first things you're going to need. And I think the Mariners have that. And DePoto will go out and get whatever he needs to make the replacements for. So I think personally that I think they could take the division. That's what I think.
Okay, so we are coming to the end of the show here. I do want to thank all of you very much for coming on here. I do need to pack my shit and load a truck here tonight. So we're going to get to topics now. I'm going to start with you, Jen, because we had to cut you off last week. Topic, and then we'll go around the horn and see what everyone thinks.
I have 2. One is a carryover from last week. I'm gonna toss both out there, and you can answer whichever one you want, and it could be different topics from different people. Question number 1, left over from last week, is why is Daniel Vogelbach on this team? What is his role? Why is he still there? If you're not going to use him as a pinch hitter, what is he even doing? And I mean that respectfully to him, because it must absolutely suck to just sit on that bench and not get used in spots where you think you might be used. My other topic is that John Schneider said after the game that Alek Manoah will remain in the rotation for the foreseeable future. What do you do with him when Yariel Rodriguez is ready to go, when he's healthy again? Does it depend entirely on what Manoah does in between, or how would you suss that out? So those are my 2 questions. Answer whichever one.
Well,
John, you want to start us off here?
What? Yeah, I think I mean, it's easy to say like, well, you just have Manoah start and then, Rodriguez, he comes in and piggybacks on then Manoah starts, but then that gives you less flexibility in other areas with that bullpen if that's how it's going to be, right? So, but I think that that's probably what they'll do is just have him, because today, if you think of if he was healthy today, then you could have gotten Manoah potentially out of there before he gave up
In the
7 runs.
third. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you could have potentially had him pitch 3, and then as soon as it got rocky, okay, bingo, like here's my guy coming in to piggyback and get us through 6 innings. So I think that's probably where it lands, even though it does give you less flexibility in an overall sense. And like, what is Bowen? Is he's still there? Like,
He's
Bowden's still
injured
hurt.
right now. Yeah. So
he's
yeah,
injured as
Francis
well? Like, man,
Francis is on the IL. Yeah.
Francis, man. So that hurts to not have him. Like anytime I hear Nate Pearson, it's funny. Like Nate Pearson, he's my guy now. Where I'm like, oh no, like when I never thought in my life it shows you what those high velocity machines have done, right? Like now it's like 97, 98, 99, 100. Who cares? If you throw a straight fastball 99, now players are like, I love it. I love a straight 99 mile an hour fastball. And it's what Pearson has done since he came to the big leagues is just like throws a dead straight 99 mile an hour fastball, no movement, no vertical movement, no horizontal movement, just dead straight, and guys kill it. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm off track, but yeah, I would say that that's probably what they do with the Manoah situation, but it makes it even more complicated. Like Jen was kind of hinting at, it's like, because Manoah never wants to come out of the game.
I honestly would like to think that if Rodriguez was healthy, Manoah would have been optioned.
Yeah.
But I actually know better. I think that they would have reinstated him regardless, because I don't think that they're managing this situation well and have not at any point. So I feel like they would have made that decision regardless. But I would like to believe that Rodriguez would have been left and Manoah would have been optioned. And I just don't like the idea of one piggybacking off the other, right? Like I think that, as you said, that really does limit things. And if Manoah, and I'm not saying, I don't know what the next few starts from him will look like, but if he doesn't have it, if the implosion is there and it's relatively early in the game, should he not be working on things elsewhere?
Yeah.
I think it's been, this is what they knew. We all know Rodriguez on a pitch limit because he didn't even pitch last year and was pitching relief the year before that, right? I think what their whole plan is, and I think Jen, you pretty much touched on this, is as soon as they thought Manoah was better, Manoah's back, Rodriguez gets put in the bullpen as like a long arm kind of thing, and that way they can regulate his innings better. I think they're very much cognizant of regulating how much he pitches because they see how well he can do when he gets in there. So I think we're stuck with Manoah. I think we are, unless Bowden Francis comes back and is pitching lights out and maybe pushes him out. That's the only thing I can see with Manoah not being used, just because there's no one else.
Joel, we'll go to you in just a second here. I did want to touch on Vogelbach because, in my opinion, Vogelbach is there because once he made the team out of spring training, they automatically owed him $2 million. And they're going to leave him right there until
Great teammate. Wonderful teammate.
Yes, wonderful
teammate. All we ever
teammate.
hear about guys who can't hit is how great they are in the dugout. Just always pulling fun pranks and gum on the hat. And God, I love how good a teammate these guys who can't hit are.
So Vogelbach will be there until Joey Votto is fully healthy, ready to go, and then they can bring him up, DFA Vogelbach, and then that way the fan base has a little glimmer of light for whatever amount of time that is.
Joey Votto is the only guy who's ever tripped over a bat and fallen off the edge of the earth.
Yeah.
Well,
it goes to show you, like, he's coming up on 41. I'm 42. Believe me, when you twist an ankle in your 40s, you don't come back as quick, and it's such a bummer because, man, it was exciting. First swing dinger.
I'm 46, so
yeah.
I've been there, but Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is Joey Votto even going to ever be ready? I guess is what I'm pushing out there at this point, right?
Okay.
I'm half convinced he tripped over his own bat on purpose just to avoid this entire shit show. But
No, I think it'll be Spencer. I think that's what it comes to. It'll be Spencer
Yeah.
Horowitz that comes up.
Yeah.
I think Vogelbach's DFA'd. I think isn't May 6th some kind of a special date on
that
the
would be
calendar or something?
tomorrow.
Yeah, I think
No, that was Manoah's date. That was the date they had to make a decision on Manoah.
okay,
Yeah.
because so I think maybe I will give to the end of May. I always say the first 2 months, give to the end of May. I think that's what they're going to do. And if Vogelbach isn't used better, then they'll DFA him and Spencer Horowitz comes up.
I mean, you do got to feel bad for him. They just haven't played him. He's had 0 at bats pretty much. Like he's just, it's how do you get your swing down? How do you get into a rhythm if you're playing once a week?
They've thrown him in a bit more lately, though. You notice that this last week, he's played way more this last week than he has at all. And I think that's part of it. I think they're trying to give him at bats so that when they do get rid of him, someone might pick him up.
Yeah.
That's what I think it's for. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Joel,
but really, he got nothing, right? I mean, he makes the team out of spring training for a reason.
To hit home runs.
Right? And then he was really given no opportunity to prove whether or not spring training was a fluke or not. I mean, it was just, he got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then too much time had passed and he's too cold and you can't put him in now because you need to win a ball game because you're always in tight ball games.
Didn't they do the similar thing with him 2 years ago?
Yeah, for that little blip. Yeah.
Like they rolled him through the, like you don't really know what you're going to use him for because like situational, you're sitting on a team where you're sitting on the bench and you have to use a catcher to pinch run for your catcher because you can't pinch run Vogelbach. And for some reason, Kevin Biggio has to stay available potentially for some later moment in the game that never happened. So it is a wild situation that you can't, the reliance on this player is such a specific thing. And you've got slow guys on the team already, like Kirk, like Justin Turner, guys who can't run very fast. And then sitting on the bench, you've got Vogelbach, who is as slow as they come. So,
Jordy, from the outsider's point of view, Alek Manoah.
I think he's just gotta get traded. I think it's one of those things you're almost doing him a disservice because by just letting him go through the motions, it's one of those things we talked about with Kikuchi on Seattle. It's like they don't know what's going wrong. He's broken. Maybe if you trade him, and you're probably not going to get much back at this point, but maybe he could go somewhere else and gets fixed. You know, you're kind of doing him a favor a little bit, but I feel like if you're holding on to him too long, you're going to get another Ricky Romero situation. So I don't know. I think you just got to trade him, cut ties. But once again, this is me on the outside cheering for a team that loves trading people. So
Right. Jeff. Let's hear your topic, buddy. I think we got time for one more topic. Apologies, Sean and Joel and Jordy. Honestly, we'll have you on again, and I'll make sure to make it up to you. I know Jen kind of got the short end of the stick last week. Normally, we would go a little bit longer and get to everyone, but I just unfortunately don't have the time right now as I am moving to Toronto May 12th. By the way, everyone listening, Jen was at Baseball Town with me in September. We're going to start doing Baseball Town every single month. The first one is going to be May 30th at the Comedy Bar on Bloor and Ossington. The guests, I know Ross Atkins loves to just run things back, but we're switching it up. So we've got a whole new panel of guests here. Obviously, Jen, I'll make sure to have you back down maybe on the June show if you're available. But May 30th, we're going to have Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. We're going to have Shoa Lee of Jays Talk and Sportsnet, the Fan 590. We're going to have Avery Chenye of Gate 14. And then we're going to have some fun little roast battle stuff as well. I've got some comics that are going to represent the Jays, a comic that's going to represent the Yankees, and it should be a good time. Tickets are going to be available on Tuesday. Little plug there. And on that, Jeff, let's hear your topic.
Well, first of all, I love Keegs. I've known Keegs for a long time. I used to write for Blue Jays, for Jays Journal years back when I first met the boy, and he's
come a long way.
I love Keegs. Keegs is a great guy.
Too, man. Yeah.
So my topics, I mean, I touched on it earlier. And this goes back to George Springer. Is George Springer our Vernon Wells contract now? And can you get anything for him? That's my one topic. The other one is, how often should Kirk be actually playing? Because Danny Jansen's proved, and it's funny, we talked about this earlier about I think Kami said this, where players are doing their own thing. Like, forget what the coach says, I'm gonna do my thing. Jano's the perfect example of that. He goes, I'm just gonna pull the ball and I'm gonna smack the crap out of it. And he's doing it again. And now that he's got those specially made, one of a kind hand things that are protecting his wrists, maybe he can actually, because that's been most of his injuries the last little while, is getting hit in the hands. So how often should Kirk play? And is Springer and his contract tradable?
Sean, you want to start us off here?
Well, I mean, you're just going to have to live with the Springer deal. I mean, I don't think he's going anywhere. Right? Like, how do you move him unless you want to tie an asset or two to it to free up some space? I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you do want to, have a couple
Get
of
out
assets
from under that,
along
yeah.
with him. You eat most of the money and then you get a usable player in turn. I mean, I guess everything's tradable, but I just look at it like, I hate the idea of having to eat half the money and give up assets to get him out of here. Like, I don't think he's like a poison or a cancer or somebody who needs to be kicked out. He just needs to be moved down the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs to be a guy who's not an everyday player anymore. You knew when you signed the deal that it was going to age kind of poorly.
Look at how good Evan Longoria was last year in a role that fit his skill set.
Well, and they said the same. I mean, remember when Bautista, they would, like, I remember people would talk about Bautista similarly to, the way that they would talk about Springer, where he's kind of a guess hitter. And guess hitters don't age well because they need to be able to get loaded up. And they're, if you look at Springer's home runs, it's like he ambushes, everything is an ambush.
Yeah.
Where the guys kind of sneak a high fastball past him, and he is just ambushes the first pitch of the game, fastball out of the yard. And so he's kind of a guess guy. He's kind of a foot down early go guy. And once teams know that you've lost a little bat speed and you're guessing even more, they'll just keep throwing you off speed. And that's what you're seeing him now, is sort of like just swinging hard through off speed stuff and miss it. And
Jordy,
other teams go, he's garbage. Like, why would anybody want to bring him in anyway?
Vernon was garbage when they traded him, and he still got traded to the Angels with a bunch of years left in his contract. I mean, Artie Moreno's a different beast. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that he can be fixed. I'm just wondering, is there a team out there who think they can, even with getting later in his years, they can fix him? Is there one team out there that thinks that maybe they can fix him?
Jordy, when you look at George Springer, knowing that he is in year 4 of his contract here, so he has 2 more to go after this season. He's owed close to $75 million still is remaining on his contract.
Wow.
Can you see a team out there? Yeah. Can you see a team out there, Jordy, that could see some real value in Springer? Or is this kind of like what Sean said, and the only way you're going to move it is if you eat a bunch of money and package him with a prospect?
Yeah, no, I think Sean hit the nail on the head with that one. Yeah, you do have to you got to entice people to take him. And as he was talking that, I was thinking, I was like, well, who would want him? And the only scenario I can think of is maybe there's a team that's going all in, but they're super young, and they're like, well, maybe if we got a guy who's going to play once in a while, but just kind of has been there before. And the only team that I can even think of would do
Baltimore.
that, maybe Baltimore. Yeah. But I don't think Baltimore has room. Like, they've got so many guys that are producing right now, even off the bench. So I don't think they'd have a use for him. So yeah, it's interesting, but I don't know. I don't see anyone wanting him unless you
somebody
just say,
desperate for outfield defense. I guess if there's a team that's sort of on the rise, like you said, a young team that has playoff aspirations that is just awful in the outfield, maybe like, something like that.
Like, the dream is we're all eating our words here come July, and we're all like, oh my goodness, George Springer has completely turned it around. I can't believe we were even talking about trading him. And listen, there's a lot of the fan base that loves George Springer. I like him. his personality is great. He's always I feel like he is a good chemistry guy, which is something that, like, we've talked about the culture. It is lacking, right? So but that said, honestly, if he is what he is right now, like, he's not a producer. He just doesn't produce. And Joel, when you look at George Springer, and feel free to answer the Alejandro Kirk question if you would rather, but when you look at George Springer, where do you think he is at in his career?
He's at the point where the bat speed is slowing down. He's a fastball hitter, the way Sean had mentioned it, and these types of players face a fork in the road of whether they live and die by the style that they've made famous over the past part of their career, or they redefine themselves. He's got to. He's the type of guy who attacks pretty much everything in the zone. What does he keyhole? What does he look for specifically? He needs to be the type of guy to punish one pitch, not say, oh, I think I can hit that and swing at it early in a count when it wasn't what he was originally targeting. His entire approach kind of needs to change. His swing needs to be cut down. And the hopes that I have that there's potentially more in the tank is the fact that his legs aren't gone. His legs aren't gone, right? So you can sit there. This guy stole the most bases in his career last year. He stole 20 bases. So the foundation is still there. This isn't a Brandon Belt who can still hit, but he can't move, right? This is a guy who can still move. There's still a degree of athleticism left in him. So hopefully there is, but do I trust in any way the hitting coaches in Toronto? Like, we have this amazing facility, this top of the line facility. Well, this is a situation where you have a player who's deteriorating. Let's see that top of the line facility come in and get a couple more years out of this player. This is what it's for. This is a specific reason that you went out and built this top of the line thing. Well, if you've got all these slow motion cameras and you've got all of this technology, use some of it to get some more damn years and some more tread out of these tires, because you're spending a lot and nobody wants it until you can make him valuable again and make him trade worthy. And then potentially you can move on.
I was going to bring that up. Like, do aging players realize, are they able to recognize that they need to change the way that they've always played? Right? Is it like drivers as they age don't realize at what point they maybe need to give up the driver's license, right? Does a player as he ages realize, I need to change what I've been doing my entire career if I want to continue to have longevity? And if they can't, is anybody saying it to him? And to your point, do you trust this particular set of coaches to be that right voice to get him to change his approach?
The one person in the organization who's done it was Votto. Mm-hmm. Votto faced a part of his career where his numbers were declining, and he said, I've got to slug more. My batting average isn't the same thing that it's going to be. I'm not a 320 hitter anymore. But can I hit 240, 260 and slug close to 500? Am I that guy now? And he took that step in redefining himself. Matt Carpenter did it. Nolan Arenado did it. These guys have faced that decrease in bat speed, and they said, how do I find myself in the offseason? What changes do I need to make? And that's where
I think
some
the big
guys
mental
don't have to change at all. Like Justin Turner is 40 and he looks like he's exactly the same hitter he was 10 years ago.
Brilliant. I wish that was contagious, because it's not an all max effort swing. That's the swing where he's able to get out in front. Everything is mechanically going in advance, and he's able to cut his swing down because of the way it's built. But it's smooth, and it's like an 85% swing that he knows if he barrels that ball up on launch angle, it goes 420. He's not trying to hit it 480. He's not trying to hit it 480. He knows how to put that ball in the gap.
I really do think it's mental with guys like that, because they look at it and they look at their career and they say, like, look at George Springer, right? Right now, he's saying, you know what my approach got me? $150 million. It got me 2 World Series, or I guess 1 World Series, but his successes, he looks back and he can say it's because of my approach. But how many guys have the mental wherewithal to realize their physical limitations as they start to get older? And listen, this isn't a baseball thing. This is a human thing, right? I mean, every injury I get is because I wind up thinking I can still act like I'm 22. And then I'm like, oh, now my arm hurts for frickin' 2 weeks because I didn't warm up properly. You know, like there is that mentality of just like, well, this is what got me here. And it takes a special individual to be able to be like, you know what? I'm throwing my old approach, the what got me here, out the window, like Votto did, and I'm going to reinvent myself. And I think it's why there's so few guys that go that route.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, then
But
get
Do we-
Joey Votto up here,
Get
regardless
Joey
of whether or
Yeah,
Votto
come on,
not
up
you
Joey.
here.
walk.
That's right.
This
Let's
season's
close things
favorite.
off. Let's close things off on that. I do wish to thank all 5 of you very, very much for being here. I really do appreciate it. A big apologies to everyone who's watching this and is saying, damn it, this is so much better live. I understand that. And believe me, I'm going to do my best to make sure that I'm not the bumbling old man with no technological skills by next week. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we'll see
no
what
promises.
happens.
We'll
Yeah,
try.
no promises. As long as I don't throw my arm out, we should be good, hopefully. Sean Lacomber, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I can't wait till the next time that we have you on the show. Jeff, right back at you, buddy. Jeff, where can people find your content?
You can find me at jeffreymorton.com. I do work as a voiceover actor as well, so I am looking for that kind of thing. But the podcast will probably be up the end of the month, as I, like you, am learning how to do all of this on the fly because my Adam Mack,
Yes.
he's working for a catering company now.
Okay.
So that's the business. But yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. This has been so much fun. Thanks.
Yeah, you were great. We'll have you back. Jordy.
So-
Jordy Bott with the walk-off Mariners. Where can folks find you, buddy? And you know what? Your Seattle Mariners looking pretty good.
Oh yeah, you can find me in the clouds of happiness right now. More specifically on Instagram, we're at Walk Off Mariners. That is our Instagram handle. My personal one is Jordy is a nice guy, all one word. Those are probably the 2 I use most, or your pal Jordy on Twitter. That's how you can access me.
Jen, quickly, what is your Twitter handle?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at baseball_Jen, Jen with 2 N's.
And I'm going to be dragging Jen out to some of these live show folks so you can see her live and in person. We'll let you know more about that as tickets come up for sale. Joel, my friend, I am so excited for tomorrow, dude. We are going to be sitting down with the one and only Eric Gagne.
Yeah, I got a French last name too, but I'm gonna come in there and be like, "Bonjour, comment ça va?" I'm gonna try to flex with the French. So. No, that's just nuts. Honestly,
it's so crazy. Joel, where can people find your content? Where can people find your content on TikTok, and where can they find you in general?
Right here, hey Kami, hey _. Yeah, that's important. Kami on TikTok. Just doing the old thing that I always do, but got the show. We talk about it usually on Wednesdays, and it's signed a lot of really hard to deal with paperwork over the last week. Really tough stuff, lawyers, stuff that I really, really don't understand, and completely understand why Ohtani got fleeced, because I don't know those types of numbers, right? So when you're put in those types of situations, you can be like, oh, I understand how that, like, somebody just came in and swindled you, because I'm just not a money person. But yeah, it's all going really, really well, and so excited for tomorrow. And thanks again for having me on today.
And to all of you, the grounds crew members, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be live next Sunday for Long Toss, and we'll see you Tuesday for Mailbag. Cheers. Take care, everybody.